So given this conversation we're having about violence and political violence, the potential for it, where do you think we are short term and sort of long term? And what do we need to be looking out for as average citizens, right? As engaged, observant citizens?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That's one that we should all be paying attention to. So when the people who say like, "Oh, the sky is falling," we're in a democratic crisis. This is an existential crisis for our country, and then like my kids' generations kind of roll their eyes and be like, "Yeah, whatever. Okay, boomer." I, um, I think let's listen to those people who are saying that because they are not wrong. This is very serious as a moment for our country. This is a watershed moment, I would say, and by just a happy coincidence, we avoided it the first time, but just barely. We There was Trump. I think when he got into power, he was not yet savvy enough, a politician or even our leader, to understand how to really build the infrastructure that he would need to keep a hold on his power. He's gotten rid of all the advisors who we thought were kind of standing as the guardrails to preserve our democracy. He's gotten rid of them. He's recognized that he needs to replace those with absolute loyalists who will not question him, sycophants who will continue to really tell him whatever he wants to hear. Um, and also, he's learned from other smart people how he will need to 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 adjust if he gets into power this next time. So when he tells us, tells a group of evangelicals, you don't have, just vote for me now because you'll never need to vote again. He really means it. When he says he'll be a dictator on day one, he means it. These are not just kind of oh, that's just Trump being Trump. No, he means it. He is, at least fortunately for us, he's actually he's telegraphing what he's going to do, so that helps. But he's also now surrounding himself with people who are going to help ensure that that does happen. And he's laid the groundwork already with the Supreme Court, and when they gave him total immunity for anything that he does while in office, or just about anything that he does while in office.
Yeah.
So I
Let
think,
me ask you this question then.
yeah.
So let's make it go into fantasy world. And we talked earlier about charismatic leaders, right? They're
Mhm.
almost the fuel and their necessity. And you see people try to emulate Trump, and they can't do it. Very few can pull it off. So what happens typically when you have that kind of leader who comes into authoritarian power and then they vanish and they have this sort of sycophantic network left in place? Um, and I guess I'm going to answer my own question partly. Sometimes there's somebody waiting in the wings who's maybe not as savvy, but knows how to operate. Is that sort of, either it all crumbles or it all becomes even more dangerous?
Yeah, and I'm sure we've seen kind of examples of both across history, for sure. I will say when you have a cult of personality, which is what this is, around one person, it is very difficult to then kind of pass that on to someone else. So that is one thing that, like, if it's people want to be the next Trump, and I'm sure that the next one who's kind of bigger, better, and smarter will probably come around at some point. But right now, it is really a cult of personality around one man, and getting him power. There is a sort of bargain that has been made where I will, for his base, where he is basically effectively said, I will make you feel good again. We're going to make America great again. What he means is I'll make you feel good. I'll make you feel like you have power. I'll make you feel like you have control. And in return, you'll give me absolute power. And that's the deal. I think they understand it. They're okay with it because they want to feel good, because they do have legitimate grievances and legitimate things that have happened, that have, jobs have gone overseas. Neoliberalism has really wrecked middle America. Um, and um, and so it is true. And so that they're there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about the middle class's kind of status, particularly the white middle class, who feel like they do not have the sort of place in America that they once had. Now that's I'm not saying that that's true that they don't have the place, because I think that they do, but there it is true that people feel that way, and perception matters. And so I think that if they feel that way, and he's offering to make them feel good about their place in society, in American society again, then they'll say, I'd rather feel like I'm still in control, I'm still on top of other groups who are not the sort of white working class, majority white working class, and then
Well,
I'm willing, yeah,
you
I'm
also have
willing to kind of let him
you have
say,
nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose, right? You have nothing to lose by supporting him. If he wins, great. If he doesn't win, they're not really coming to take my guns. They'll, that's what we say, but they're not really coming to do that. They're not really coming. So I think you're right. It's sort of like I'll hedge my bets, right? Uh,
I think, yeah, well, like he'll, it's more important for me to feel a sense of sort of prowess, to feel like I'm in control and that this is my country still, and I have some control over my life and my and my country. I'd rather have that than people who I don't identify with having that control, and then being in power. I would rather actually not have that happen. And so I think that there, like I said, there are legitimate economic grievances that are real. There are also these kind of like cultural things that are perceived.
hmm.
And so put those two things together, and you have a person saying like, "I'll make you feel better." I'm not actually going to make your economic status better. In fact, I just told Elon Musk the other day that I will laugh at you when you actually lose your job to these big corporate giants. I'm laughing at you. However, I'll make you feel better about it. And so I think some people are just gonna be okay with that. So I think to answer your first question, we're at a watershed moment. But I actually believe that if he takes power, what everybody's saying is true. That our democracy as we know it will be no more. In many ways, he's already laid the groundwork for that, but he was not smart enough to kind of
Well,
seal the deal the first time.
he wasn't prepared to be president. He didn't want the job. He stumbled into it. So he
Yeah,
muddled around and uh so we're gonna move on to hot
yeah.
takes time.
Hmm.
So hot take. You're totally unprepared.
Hit me.
Whose death was more tragic? Tupac Amaru or Tupac Shakur?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's you're setting me up for failure with that one. I know the answer, but I don't want to tell you because I don't want to.
You have to answer.
Well, I could say I take the easy way out and just say Tupac Shakur because nobody remembers or knows who Tupac Amaru is. So
So who is
that's
Tupac Amaru?
so Tupac Shakur, the rapper, was named after this Peruvian Andean rebel of the late 18th century named Tupac Amaru. So his actual name is Tupac Amaru Shakur. That's not a stage name. That's the name that his mother ended up giving him. I think she renamed him that. He was born with another name. Um, uh, and so he was she renamed him Tupac Amaru Shakur out of this Peruvian rebel. And so this guy ended up leading a huge rebellion against the Spaniards that was really a kind of almost we would call it now almost an anti-racist rebellion, where he brought indigenous people, mestizos, who are kind of mixed of European and indigenous, with black people, really all kind of people of color, and also some American-born Spaniards, and basically said, let's unite against the kind of colonizer. And they wreaked a lot of havoc, and they came pretty close to actually toppling the crown in the Andes in Peru. But they lost, and he was made an example of, and he was executed very publicly in the square of Cusco on May 17th of 1780. So in some ways, his death was tragic surely for the movement, but in some ways it was inspirational because it led other people to then kind of take up his name and his likeness and kind of claim to be fighting that same cause to the point where you have a Black Panther, Afeni Shakur, naming her son Tupac Amaru, believing that kind of spirit of kind of anti-colonialism and of rebellion and of really fighting an indigenous anti-colonial war was still alive and well in her son. And so I think that's his Tupac Amaru's death was in some ways less tragic because it was more inspirational to centuries of people who would end up really understanding that cause and trying to take it up. And when Tupac Shakur's death just led to a new era of not so good music. So tragic, good music, but not so good. And so it was kind of tragic in its own right.
So how do you ever bring up Tupac Shakur in your classes?
Yeah, I do, and it's funny because it's like I talk about Tupac Amaru, so I talk about Latin American history, and I say, oh, by the way, did you know that what I just said? And students are like, oh, cool, no, I didn't know that, and I always joke that like 20 years from now, you won't remember one thing you learned in this class, but you'll remember where Tupac got his name.
At least you haven't gotten to the generation yet who's like, who's Tupac Shakur?
No, I was telling the students not very long ago. I was like, oh, I was talking about that. And I said, does anybody even does anyone know who Tupac Shakur is? Like, does anybody know that? And a student was like, raises her hand. I was like, oh, thank God. The student still understands the reference. And I was like, she raised her hands. And then she goes, yeah, my dad listens to Tupac.
Oh,
I said, get out of my
yeah, get
classroom
out.
right now. Yeah, thank you for making me feel so old. So luckily he's an icon. And so I think
Yeah,
people he's still cool, I think,
yeah, yeah. All right,
because he's a
so
martyr.
yeah, so wrapping up, kind of your career and thoughts and all this. What's been one of the most personally impactful moments in your research and why?
Oh, wow. One of the most personally impactful moments in my research. Um, Probably going into Peruvian prisons and talking to people who were people who were convicted of terrorism by the Peruvian state, and they were serving very long sentences, and having an opportunity to really to hear their perspective and their experience, and realizing that that they um, that these were people who didn't want to just that were not prone to violence. They're not people who wanted to just like tear it all down per se, but they were just people who really they fought for a cause that they believed in to their core. They believed that they were making the society a better place, and they were willing to kind of take the ultimate risk in order to do so. And I was talking to one person who actually told me in a moment of reflection, like, hey, this is a woman who was in the a guerrilla in fighter who was in prison in Peru, and she told me, like, because of my involvement in this war, I've been orphaned, I've been widowed, and I've been had my right, my liberty taken away from me. But I also realized that because of my actions, I've left people orphaned, I've left people widowed, and I've left people with their liberties taken away from them. And she was speaking only for herself, not for the organization. This was not the Shining Path, but a group called the MRTA. And she said, and so I recognize that, and I have to live with that. And that was a pretty profound moment for me to hear, like you said, that human
Hmm.
kind of reflection.
Well, yeah, it's kind of sobering that karma, right? You inflict harm and harm is done back to you, and there are consequences that just sort of swirl around until there's some type of order, and it all sort of there's that chaos that's stirred by personalities and people and ideologies that maybe in the end don't care about you at all.
Hmm.
Um, so as we wrap up, we're into actions and takeaways.
Okay.
Do any homework? Do you have one or two uh, takeaways for folks that are listening, either one related to kind of your field of expertise, then maybe one random one, or did you not do your homework, Miguel?
Well, as a good professor and academic, I did do my homework. So, and I can give people homework too as a result.
Go for
And
it.
all right, so I would say that the homework that I would recommend people do is to check out, to give a plug for Carolina Public Humanities, which is an actual a center at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill that works that focuses on engaging the broader public beyond the academy in these kind of really important questions in the humanities. So they have talks on, and workshops for the public and lectures for the public on topics like charisma. They had one, I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 years ago, on authoritarianism, actually, where they talk about from Napoleon to the Romans to the Pinochet and Chile, and like, well, what do these all have in common? And I think a lot of those are recorded. And if you go to Carolina Public Humanities, you can find some of their past recordings, but also opportunities to continue to watch them either via Zoom or in person if you live in the area in the Triangle. Their events are really informative and they're really geared for engaging a public. They get rid of the jargon
Yeah.
and the kind of academic speak, and they really break it down in a way that makes sense to people and their lives. And I think that's a really powerful form of public engagement that the university does.
I might have to check that out myself.
Yeah, it's really fun, actually. And then in terms of, you said the other one was like less.
Anything random, just
Okay.
TV show recommendation, favorite new ice cream spot, doesn't matter.
Okay. Let's see. So that one I would have to say, I did see Deadpool and Wolverine. Uh, and like it was funny. It was very a lot funnier than I thought. But it was like I had not seen either of the previous two, so it was completely out of context for me, and I still found it entertaining. But it's made like 70,000 billion quadrillion
Yeah,
dollars,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
wouldn't recommend anyone necessarily to go see it. But but I think that it's still probably the best movie out right now.
It's really funny you actually said that because when Rachel and I did our test episode, she had just taken her son to see it. So I actually have a recording of her doing a mini review of Deadpool and Wolverine.
All right, so we got to find another. The thing is, I saw Trap from M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Is it? Oh, not
not
good.
so good. So I mean, not terrible, but
So that's a
like,
negative recommendation. That's a D recommendation.
oh, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that. I like M. Night Shyamalan. It's just it was all right, but it was just the thing is that like it's kind of slim pickings right now, and so
Yeah.
if you like really raunchy, vulgar humor, which I do, then then Deadpool was definitely entertaining.
Yeah. Then you should definitely watch the other two.
I'm gonna have to now because like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sure a lot of those jokes I didn't get.
Don't watch them with your kids though.
Yeah, and I won't comment on
Good.
whether or not I brought my kids with me to the theater because then I don't want to get canceled. But they may or may not have been there. Oh, my son's 18; he's going to
He
college,
can do
so
whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants.
he can see it on his own.
He's a free elf now.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to close this out. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. We have these relatively, well, kind of frequently. Whenever we see each other, we have these types of conversations. But I'm appreciative of you kind of wanting to go a little more public with our conversations, so that other people can like they don't know what they're talking about. Because we seem to think we know what we're talking about, and sometimes that's enough. Um, but thank you for making the time to go.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me here, and congratulations on the show. It's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to tuning into the other episodes.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Credible Opinions. Check us out at credibleopinions.org to join our email list and find our socials. And please tell your friends and share the conversation and be a part of the conversation in your own community. Agree or disagree, let's teach and learn together. See you next time.